Hey guys, Did the Awesome here to give you my review on Team Battlegrounds. This is a relatively new feature at the time of recording this video. It's actually the beginning of the open, the open thing. It's, they call it the beta. So this is just the testing grounds. This isn't like the full-on experience. In terms of rewards, it's not like the full experience. They put a view of what it would be up in the future for Team Battlegrounds, but this is just the testing phase, or like the beta phase. This is the beta. There was a testing phase, and I've seen both. So, like based on what was the like in the first testing phase compared to this one, much better. The end defenses are more realistic. I think 1 to 2. In terms of rankings, 1 to 3 rankings at the end is a lot more fair requirement. You don't need 4s or 5s. I feel like 1 to 3 is much better of an idea than the 4s and the 5s. And in terms of these last nodes here, like beginning of this, it was like 3 to 4s and like 4 to 5s for that last one. So we're going to talk about my personal thoughts on the event. So if you don't know how this really goes, basically you put a lot of monsters on defense. Like there's a maximum of 60 teams per area, and each area you fully take, you get a bunch of points for it. For a successful attack, you get 100 points. For a successful defense, you get 50 points. The attack is just for the enemy, but if you defend against the enemy, you get 50 points. So that just doesn't mean toss like 3 random monsters together and call that good. Have a little strat to it, because odds are they'll probably resort to using their own level 100 monsters. So you probably can assume that this event's very resource-based. It is very much so a resource-based event. It's dependent on really what monsters you have in your arsenal and how you really use them in combat. I think this is a good answer to not being able to really use your monsters that you really like that you don't have ranked up. Like, before in the old days with the PvP and what have you, nowadays that isn't too much of a luxury, but now this is pretty much the mode that settles that problem. You can now use things that you really like, but it's not ranked up. You don't have to use, or it's not a situation where you kind of have to use your best monsters. You have to use, in terms of PvP, you always have to use ranked up stuff, or else you're just gonna get squashed. In this mode, you can actually use monsters. You can actually use your 100 stuff, and the enemy will also use their level 100 stuff. And it's a lot of fun. It is. In all honesty, this event so far has been a lot of fun. Being able to use old monsters that you really don't use in Team War is really nice, and winning them, it is really nice. I don't think I've used my Aran yet, or like Grub, Goran. If you're new to my channel, I have fan favorite monsters. That's kind of hard for me to use because everything nowadays is ranked up and they're not ranked up. But being able to use them here is relatively nice. I do enjoy that. It is something I enjoy. Now, obviously, since this is a resource-based event, that means you are limited to what you have, and this is relatively true. So a lot of people are just kind of resorting to run like level 3 runes, like 3 team speeds or like 3 speeds, or just the basic runes, because they obviously you want to save the good stuff for your good stuff, right? So yeah, it's basically resource wars and just the random stuff in your storage, really. For example, like this defense right here, this guy's running a monster that doesn't even have a trait, just like a defensive trait. But see, it's all this stuff, all this level 100 stuff you see right here. It's just what people have available to them. I will say 1 defenses, like running 1 defense, that worked in like the first version of this. In the beta, it's not as good anymore. Running a much more capable defense is much more beneficial. Running 3 monsters, you even get 150 points in total per 3 set. There's really not much point to do onesies. Not too much, no. You might as well save, if you only have like one monster available for that specific element or book, you might as well just use it for an attack because you have a higher chance of winning the attack and getting 100 points versus just getting 50. In fact, the enemy benefits from it because then they can just bring 2 of their 100 monsters and just save a resource and just take the 100 points from you. Because the enemy gets 100 points for each successful attack, keep in mind. So that running one monster in defense is kind of dumb because you kind of have a lower chance of winning at that point. You don't want that. It also seems like the monsters don't recover life and or stamina on defense, as you can see here with Amanda W. Shout out to Amanda W. Amanda W. But I have no idea who she is, but I just like, Amanda W. That's funny. Amanda W's monsters doesn't seem to recover, so once you battle them and they've kind of lost their attack and or stamina, other players will have an easier time getting to them. Relics also, yeah. In terms of relics, I'm not too sure on it. You might as well run the relics on your good defense monsters. Just do that, and then just go with the attack. You know what I'm saying, my boys? Just attack defenses. It seems more beneficial to have really good defense ups up front. Run your good relics, run your good monsters up front. Because let's be honest here, if they've reached your back row, you've probably already lost. Let's be real here. Like if they take any of the up front points, it's more beneficial. And if they've already reached back here, odds are you've probably lost. So you kind of want to have a better up front. You want to have a better up front defense. It doesn't matter about your back row defense. That's the most important stuff, because if they can't get through these two specifically, then they just have a really, really, really hard time. I think for good defenses up front, think of monsters that have high sustain and like can regen stamina, like Invar, for example. I think Invar is the man in this event because it's such a well-balanced support. It's good for a lot of situations, blinding, dazing. Not only will it help you preserve your monsters, it can regen their life and stamina, and we just saw that it doesn't regen life or stamina. It's based on how they battle ended. So if they ended with really weak monsters, then your enemy can just attack with another team and wipe out the rest of your team. If you have like a Vinvar or something that can heal and or sustain those monsters, that's a relatively good setup. That's an extremely good setup. And unless you do all sorts of things. Everything. As you can see here, our team is just focusing. It's kind of a mixed match between these three, but for the most part, we're focusing on this one, 13 out of 60, because we're getting a lot of points out of it, which is really good. Also note that you need a minimum of 113,000 points to qualify for the team rewards. So if you're in first place, you get 50 Taleni cells, and a gold relics chest, 35 elementium, and 500 orbs. I think the 500 orbs, you really should look into that. 500 orbs is a lot, and it's really, really, really nice that to have such. So it's easier to rank up your War Masters and or just obtain them for when they come on release. I will say save your orbs for War Masters on release. You might as well do that. Wait till really just invest in all the new War Masters that come out on that day. So, I mean, like in terms of that time period, because you get a free X rune out of it, you need at least 2,300 orbs to get that done. So just save up your orbs. As of the time of recording this video, I mean, in the long distant future, where all the War Masters are out, that this information's irrelevant. Just focus on ranking up the monsters you really liked at that point. But that's about it. in terms of the value of the orbs here when on the free X rune. I think getting free runes is relatively nice. But yeah, you need at least 113,000 points to qualify. That's your team. Your whole team needs to get that done. So again, you really want to just stockpile a bunch of monsters on defense. to get points, but make sure it makes sense. Make sure it has a good probability of winning too. I'm just saying it's a good idea. I think putting in all honesty, here's a good setup. Maybe running a War Master and two things that aren't they don't have like an immunity. I think that's a good setup. The War Master with two monsters that don't have immunities, so you're protected. I'd say Possession's a good one. Let's say if it's like a dark and two other elements, then you have like the whole team is immune to that specific deny, and that could be good. That could bother people. But that's just a good example. Again, you don't be sloppy with your defenses, but just make sure it's good enough to possibly win. You just don't want a garbage defense team for the enemy just to win over. If you don't have, obviously, if you don't have those resources or like that setup, obviously you have to put them on defense or use them for the attack. Just make sure it's an attack team that's actually going to win the fight against another player's team. These are all the defense points here. As you can see, the number one boy is the Dark, who has put a lot of monsters on his or her defense. You get a lot of points for just putting stuff on defense. Again, I wasn't very too sure going into this event, so next time I know better. But yeah, just having a good defensive up. I think having a good defensive up front is all you really need. Because again, you don't really use the back row because the enemy can't just pick and choose where they want to go. They have to clear the front, the middle, and to get to your back. So you might as well have a good defense up front, and then they really can't do much. That being said, though, if they do go through your up front, they go through the middle and get to your end, you might not have a whole lot of resources. I'd say maybe like one or two or three players can put the last placements on defense. But you should have a good up front. I think having a good up front's more important. Because if they can't get through that, then you just kind of win. Because see, they still haven't cleared our up front yet. They still haven't done anything up here. The 7's almost done, but I feel like it's going to take them longer to get through our back row here. Because we still have 60, 57. We still have monsters on these defenses. And they might run out of resources too. Yeah, so you really have to consider all of the teams that you can make on attack. I will say if you take the time to make like how many monsters you can put on defense and how many monsters you can use on the attack, I think that's a good idea. You should really measure up your inventory. How many teams can you make, and think of all the possible defenses the enemy will probably put on there, then go from there. Overall, I really like this event for the ability to use your old things. It is relatively nice. One thing I don't like though is the gem factor of it, they don't come back. the monsters you use don't come back. Period. Like once you've used them, you've used them. You can bring them back with gems, of course, but they don't have a respawn timer or anything like that. I think that's nice that they can't really use it unless they spend gems. But I also don't like the fact you have to spend gems. I don't like the fact that's an option. I don't like the fact you can just spend gems to bring them back. I feel like they should just remove the option entirely and just make it not be able to be used anymore. I think that's a good idea. But that's a thing. And it bothers me. I will say that's my major critique about it, is you kind of have to spend gems to use your good stuff. If you do need the points still. Like if it's a neck and neck war, you kind of want to do that, and that's just kind of gems out of your pocket. I don't like that. I don't like that too much. In terms of let's say like a free-to-play player, they really don't have the luxury of just using their good stuff all the time, and that's true. That's true. You gotta use your stuff. So again, you really just have a good upfront. If you want to have a good time in wars, just use your good stuff up front. They'll kind of make the enemy have to do that too. So I think okay. So what are monsters that are good for war besides Invarf? Things that AOE stamina and life regen. That's an obvious tip. What else is there? What else could be good? Shielding. I think monsters that can apply multiple shields is valuable here. Because again, you're kind of on a time limit, or like you're on a, your monsters don't regen stamina or life. So to be able to preserve that life is relatively nice. I think tenacity shield defenses play a huge part here, my boys. Because it'll give you, not only give you good base life, but, your monster's good base life. Then that gives them time to recharge if they ever run out of stamina and the enemies have to go through that again. It's kind of like respawning life pretty much. So even if a previous enemy did a lot of damage to you, if you have a good leveled up tenacity shield, you're good to go again. You're good to go again, and I think that's a good idea. Though it is an expensive idea, but if you can do it, just run one per defense, and I feel like that's all you really need if you take the time to level them up. I'd say up to maybe 30k life. 30, like if it's a tenacity that goes up to 30k, I think that's good enough for that specific, like per team. If you take the time to level up tenacity to that, I feel like that's good sustain. I feel like that's really good. What else is there to say? What other monsters? Life stealing. Life stealing's pretty good here. Again, just natural recovery. And it gives them time to recover their own stamina if they lack the stamina regen monster on their team. Regen staff, like stamina regen staffs and or amulets, that's also really good. Maybe like one huge relic per team, really. You kind of like preserve your relics. Unless it's your big boy boss team. Like for big boy boss teams that run really good relics, so then the enemy has a hard time to getting through them. I think a good defense example, like for a really good defense, run Gokora with something that gives stamina regen or like an AoE immunity, like a War Master. Like if you're running a War Master and Gokora, and probably like an Agursus too, that's a good defense setup because it kind of covers almost all the options except the stamina regen problem. You don't have any passive regen, though you could run the stamina recovery staffs on necromancers. So I think that fixes it too. So yeah, running a Gokora with the AoE max life increase, the comeback essence and the healing essence, necromancer with a stamina regen staff, and that amulet could probably be just a supercharged amulet because you already have healing covered. And Ingursus can run the good old heavy duty plate and the AoE stamina draining trap. There are new traps added to this game. I don't know if they were any good. I can't recall. But they did add new relics to the game, so I can't wait to obtain them and see what they do. Like, actually take the time to see what they do. Like, in terms of number base, because right now, when I saw the information on the updates page, it just said, it didn't say a specific percentage. It just said percentages and, procking, how it procs, what have you. So I can't wait to actually get said new relics and try them out for you guys. Again, one more time, overall, I like the fact I can use old stuff. It is really nice to use old stuff. I'm really happy about it. I don't like the fact you kind of have to spend gems to to bring back your resources. If the situation calls for it, I will say only ever bring back your good stuff, like the stuff that you really, really need to use for attack. If you have to do it, if it's such a close war, you kind of have to do it. But beyond that, I'd say they've cleaned it up much, much better than they did in the first testing of it. Much, 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 much better. Much, 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 much better. But yeah, I'm happy with it. I'm happy that you guys cleaned it up. Good job, Social Point. I wish you would remove the gem spending feature and just keep the monster like not being able to be used anymore. Like that's something you guys could think about. I don't like the fact that I can spend gems to respawn. You might as well just remove the respawn option and just don't have them spawn at all. I think that's a more fairer thing too, don't you think, my boys? If they remove the gem option and just not have the monster come back at all, I think that's fair. Let me know how your team is kind of tackling this event too. Mine just kind of decided to put a bunch of monsters on defense, and that's actually seeming to be a really good idea. This is a really team communication reliant event too. So make a Discord with your team and strategize, because that's kind of what this whole event is. It's all about strategizing to put what where, what have you, and hopefully get good results in the end. I'm Dib the Awesome, and I'll catch you guys later.